1967.
You won.
But wait, there's one.
You won the medal. Medicine tour. 3 months right. You can grab the mic. You want to hold the mic or you want to just...
Whatever you want.
Yeah, just hold the mic. I think I like it better.
Hello, how you guys doing out there?
All right.
All right.
Okay.
That's why you can't see.
Two-dimensional.
Oh, he's at
So you need a ready, steady, go, Elias, or you're good to go? Well, we're waiting for Matt. Anyway, thanks for coming out. My name is Christian Fabian, and this is Jazz Story Hour in Sitka, Alaska. Hello, hello. So I have this non-for-profit. When I first moved to New York City in 2000, around 2000, 2001, I was going to an organization called Lawyer for the Arts. And I had this idea of capturing, I call it lifelong wisdom or stories of jazz musicians. And I ran it by this lawyer. Her name was Jill. And I pitched my idea. Lawyers for the Arts, the way it works is someone likes your idea, they will work on your non-for-profit pro bono, so you don't really have to pay. All you pay is just the filing fees. So I came up with a non-for-profit called RUB Inc., and I called it Records of Universal Bandwith, which is basically, could be anything. It's information which is being captured or documented for the next generation. When I came to, basically, before I introduce you, when I joined the Lionel Hampton Big Band, let me just tell you that little story. Most of the musicians in the band were twice as old as I was.
What are you saying?
Maybe not you, but a lot. Chart Stevens, Tony Barrero, many of them have passed on to the other side. So I was kind of the youngest band member. And what was great about these guys, they kind of took me under the wing, and I was surprised I was in the band, and I had a lot to learn, and they made sure I learned it too. But the cool thing was, once you were in the band, you were in the band. You wouldn't get fired or anything, because it was the Lionel Hampton Big Band, and the only one who would hire and fire was Lionel Hampton. So as long as he was cool with you, everything was fine. But I learned a lot from elderly musicians. When I was at Berklee College of Music, I always had a hard time connecting to my peers. It was very competitive. It was very, it was just different. And I kind of felt left out. So when I moved to New York and I thought about a non-for-profit, the idea was to start a non-profit where I could capture information of, people who were older than me or more experienced. And I thought, that would be cool. All these great stories and all this great information, you don't learn it in school. You don't learn it in college. It's very hard to find on YouTube, because right now on YouTube, it's all about playing, it's all about impressing people within 30 seconds. TikTok, the attention span, 10 seconds, and that's it. You move on to the next clip. So this is really something for the younger generation to be passed on. So let me introduce you, and we have another guest here. But let me introduce you, my brother from another mother, Cleave Guyton, from the Lionel Hampton Big Band.
I'm sure you see the resemblance.
You do.
It's striking.
Yeah. For 28 years, we are playing in the Lionel Hampton Big Band. And I just have to point this out. The guys have there's a lot of trust in the band. Once you're in the band and you've been for a long time, the great thing about that family, the great thing about the band, it's like my first family I ever experienced in the United States. The guys, they're playing all over the world, but you call them, like Cleave, I call them at any day, night, hey, how you doing? And our friend Wally Gator, who got us to Sitka, who was the drummer in the Lionhead Big Band when I first joined, he was like that. Like you could call Wally every time of the day, and he would pick up the phone. So anyway, for this very first jazz story hour, I invited my really good friends, Cleave Guyton from the Lionhead Big Band, and you were the musical director when I joined the band. And also on stage we have a good friend of mine, Matt King, great keyboard player.
Give him a big round of applause. All right.
And Matt, we talked about it yesterday. He was one of the first gigs when I moved to Manhattan. I was so scared about doing gigs in Manhattan, but he was on one of the first gigs I was doing. He was playing with the bass player. His name was Russ Bonagura. Well, anyway, he got me this cocktail hour. Matt was the piano player, and I was so nervous. And all I remember of Matt is like, "Yeah, man, that's great, man." He was like, he looked over me and said, "Yeah." Like, wow, he likes my playing. Wow, I was really surprised. So anyway, and over the years I've become really good friends with you guys, and you had some amazing, amazing experiences I just can only dream of. But when I was thinking about these stories, I thought about asking you to do it. And the key about the story hour is really, if you would have to pass on information to the next generation, what is it you would pass on? And also, not everything is like glorious becoming a jazz musician. There's some hardships you go through, and the question is also, it's a bunch of questions, and I chime in at some point. How have you overcome these hardships, and how have these hardships molded you to the person you have become today? Let me just point you out about these two guys. They are great musicians. They always have a great time when you're with them on stage. Cleave was actually managing the Big Band when I joined, and everything was everything was really good organized. And Matt, I experienced, he can do charts overnight. He might stay up all night, and it's probably something you not really prefer to do. But these are great musicians. Like, if you need something from them beyond just their playing, they can do it. So, there are other skills involved, obviously, to become a great musician. And in terms of just the playing, there are other things which keeps you in the line of work, But anyway, I put out a lot of information, but it's kind of like, if someone, and we're teaching these young gentlemen and ladies from Mount Edgecombe High School, and if some of them, let's say, would be ever interested to finding out more information, basically, what is it which made you who you became today? So let's start with Cleave. And then we open up, we can talk about...
Open the can of worms there. No, wow, that's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing I would say...
We have a lot of time.
Anybody who wants to become a woodwind player, not just a saxophone player, or flute player, or clarinet player, one thing that really helped pay my bills was not only do I play saxophone, but I play all the saxophones. I play all the clarinets, well, the clarinet, B-flat clarinet, bass clarinet a little bit, and all the flutes. So that is one thing that John Laporta, who was a famous clarinet player, who played with Charlie Parker too, he told me when I was at Berklee College of Music many years ago. So, and then once you learn and you study these different woodwind instruments, then over the years, over the past 35, 40 years, I played a lot of Broadway shows, Cat and the Kings and Shuffle Along and the Temptations one that just closed, and I just got called for another one. So then I'm prepared to, like, for example, when I was doing the Temptations show on Broadway, it was like baritone sax, tenor sax, alto sax, and flute. So that's what I try to tell young people. If you really want to work, you can't just, there's no such thing as like a Louis Armstrong where you're just going to be like, or Wynton Marsalis where you're just going to be playing one instrument. Oh, yeah, I'm a star. Oh, that's the other thing. If you want to be rich, forget it. If you are, I mean, you can make a decent living playing music. But you ain't gonna be rich. But you're gonna, I can buy almost anything I want, within reason. And if I want to go and travel for a month somewhere and just not work, I can do that.
You're not gonna be a millionaire.
No, you're not gonna be a millionaire. But one thing I tell the students, it's much, much better than cleaning toilets and digging a hole every day. Plus, when you get on the bandstand, my father told me.
What about the joy we experience?
Well, that's how I'm getting to that. My father told me when I was a young man, he said, son, I will support you in anything you do, but make sure, you see what I do. I'm a laborer. My father had many jobs. He's to this day, he has his little nursing license, but he works for the Suffolk County Water Authority for 30 years. He helped brought me and my siblings into this world at Sydenham Hospital, I'm sorry. And so he said, I work because I have 4 children and I provide for my family. So he said, but son, if you want to just have a job, you want to try to have a job that it's not a job to you. And then every day you get paid for just having fun. And that is the best way to describe being a musician. When you get on the bandstand, especially when you got like a really great band, man, it's like, you're like a pig in mud. You love it. You're having a ball every day, and then you get your check, you're like, you're like, I gotta keep doing this. We got something here. No, not to mention, not only did I play, I played all over the world with Lionel Hampton, but every time Aretha Franklin came to the East Coast, I would play with her band, a regular member. I played in the Ray Charles Orchestra for a year. I played with the Count Basie Orchestra 10 years, the Ellington Orchestra. I still substitute play in there. So, these are like some of the best musicians in the world. So, I try to tell kids, it can be a real joy, but it's a lot of hard work. You can't. It's like 24 hours a day. Even when we're not practicing, we're thinking about music. When you go to sleep, sometimes I'm like thinking about it. I went to some club and I saw Charlie Parker playing on the bandstand. I mean, it's like you live it. It's a lifestyle, and So that's the only thing I can say is that you really have to play all the different family, and that will ensure if you're good enough to be able to work and make a living.
Yeah. So you said something which I never talked about, but you said sometimes you think about Charlie Parker.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, I think about Miles Davis all the time, and I think that's what connected me to Ron Carter. I had dreams about Miles Davis and still have dreams about Miles Davis. So that's something, I never talk about it openly, but there are these musical icons, they just touch your soul and they become a guide, and their music becomes a guide. So that's really incredible that I think that can be a big motivation for a young and upcoming musician once they find their person to, it's...
They're persons, because it's not just one. Because
persons.
there's so many great musicians, especially the lineage of music in America. Think about the American Songbook and how it came about. That's a lot of influence and a lot of music, a lot of standards, a lot of Broadway shows. Most of the standards come from the Broadway shows, So, yeah.
Thank you. Let's move on to Matt. I just realized, I said I know Cleave for 28 years. I realized I probably know you for 23 years. So.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, a long time. I don't feel special because I didn't dress up, and they didn't tell me to wear a jacket or anything.
No, I'm not dressed.
I came in my cashies. But I do feel special because I have a boom and I don't have to hold my own mic. Hands free. Actually, when you said Jazz Story Hour, I figured we're going to be sitting there and Bernard's going to be up here just talking for an hour. That's what I came prepared with nothing. Cause
that will happen tomorrow night.
I don't got to say a word.
I put you on the spot. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Well, also, relating this, the jazz life or musical life to student, but I don't see any students here. I mean,
That we are videotaping, so the camera.
you'll show them the
there.
video later.
Yeah.
Show them the video, okay.
And the video will go around, and that's how people will find out
Okay,
about
that's
what you're
fine.
saying.
Maybe the people at the bar are interested. Hi, Chaz. Yes, Chaz. Thank you. I'll just basically echo some of what Cleave said. It's a lifestyle. It's part of you. I think from about the age of 10 or 12, I got interested in the piano when I was around 5, and I definitely started piano lessons when I was 5. I was maybe noodling on it before then, because my mom had a piano in the house. We actually had 2. We had one on our main floor, and we had a ranch house in the basement. We had a smaller piano. So she made sure there was pianos around and music playing all the time. Then I took to it. So I started lessons at age 5, and I know definitely by, like I said, around the age of 10 or 12, I was listening to a lot of music, and I knew this is what I wanted to do. I mean, the other thing is I really had no other skills, so I don't think, I mean, some of my teachers at school, the art teacher would say, oh, you should do art, and I wrote pretty well. My English teachers were like, you should write. I wasn't really interested in those things. It was always music, music, music. So, and you have visions. Like I didn't grow up like in a household that was playing jazz. My mom played basically what we call muzak around the house, and she played sacred music. I didn't get a lot of exposure to. I was telling someone else earlier this week. Growing up in West Central Illinois, stuff on the radio was farm country. There was country music, and there was top 40. Now the top 40 at the time, granted, was very good. It was bands like the Doobie Brothers and James Taylor and Stevie Wonder and Santana, bands like that. So, but I was always going back to the piano. I had my lessons, and I learned to read, kind of. I got much better at it in college because I got my butt kicked, and I had to get better at it. I was faking it with my teacher in my town. But I always played by ear. I was always hearing stuff, and I'd go to the piano trying to figure out what I was hearing. Or if my mom had a certain record playing in the house, and it happened to be something that I thought was cool, I'd try to imitate certain phrases on the piano. That's how she initially thought to give me lessons. I was like, oh, he's trying to imitate the record. Maybe I should give him lessons, which he probably would have given me anyway. But I was always improvising, but I didn't know what to call it. I also didn't have a context for it. There was no one in my small town to take me aside and say, oh, improvising. Well, then you want to listen to jazz. You want to. That's what that's about. I didn't really realize that until I was like 16, right? And I'm playing with my first band, which was a local band that played weddings and events. We played at the Elks Club. We played at the local country club and other types of private parties. And they were covering the top 40 stuff and some country, unfortunately. No offense to country music fans, but it was never my thing. That was never my thing. So I was playing with a band full of 20-somethings and 30-somethings, and I was 14 when I started playing with them. Right, 6 years ago? So I got thrown into the fire with them and learned on the job. And every now and then it was like, Matt, solo, and I'd be like, oh, I play. I don't know. God knows what I played. I don't know what I played. It'd be Long Train Runnin' by the Doobie Brothers. And they had me playing on a B3, which I also had no idea what that thing was. I just put my hands down and played something. I'd love to have recordings of that and see how horrible it was, or maybe it wasn't. But anyway, but still, no one was connecting the dots for me in terms of improvisation and jazz. Jazz is the music that features improvisation. I wish I'd known that about 10 years earlier than I did, but I eventually put it together. Actually, I had a mentor in that band, the trombonist, who would take me out on breaks to his car and play stuff like, not straight ahead jazz, but he'd play me John Luke Ponty and Brand X and these fusion bands, right? And I kind of got into jazz through the back door of electric jazz fusion. And then I finally found out about the straight ahead stuff. And then got very focused on the piano, which all of a sudden I realized was a very cool instrument. Whereas before I was interested in synthesizers and things like that. So anyway, but long story short, I knew from a young age that I wanted to do it professionally, and I had the opportunity, fortunately, at the age of 14, to actually start doing it professionally. And according to my mom, who's since passed, rest in peace, I came home with that money from that band every weekend. Here, Mom, you know, and handed it to her, and she squirreled it away somewhere, and she said, I made enough to pay for a good chunk of my college. So they were wise enough to, you know, put it away in some fun for me instead of spending on beer, which my mom would have done. No. I'm kidding. She never touched anything. That's a joke. Sorry, Mom. So yeah, and then, you know, I got into college. I focused on jazz. I went to a jazz school, William Patterson, in Wayne, New Jersey, and just outside of New York, and studied with some greats there. Rufus Reed, one of the world's most prolific bassists. Joe Lovano, great saxophone player. John Riley, the drummer. There was lots of great. And Dave Samuels, also rest in peace, vibraphone player. Lots of great teachers there. And of course, I got out of Central Illinois, and I moved to New York, the center of jazz, center of really a lot of music, right? So, I mean, there's no place like New York for musicians in the music scene, and the art scene in general. So I got immersed in that and learned a lot of other stuff really, really quickly. It was like sink or swim. And was fortunate enough right out of college I did do some ditch digging, like your dad said to avoid. My dad said that too. I'd complain about a gig. Well, son, it's better than digging ditches. But I did some of that because just out of school, when gigs were scarce, I worked for a landscaper. You see that shrub over there? You dig up the root ball. Can you move it to the other side? It's like 100 yards away, and doing gardening for rich people in New Jersey. But anyway, I did some of that. But then I was fortunate to really start working and doing a lot of different types of gigs, not just jazz. Right? I had this envision where I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to start playing with Art Blakey or when we're on tour the world and do all the festivals, you know. And I did some of that. I've been fortunate to play a lot of the jazz festivals and work with a lot of great jazz artists. But also just because I didn't want to live in a shoebox, you know, apartment in Manhattan and not have a car and, like, you know, just eat ramen and you know, starve. Which wasn't even popular back when I got out of school. Ramen is more recent development. But I took every job. If it paid money and I didn't totally hate it, I took it. Or thought I could learn something from it, or connect me to another musician or another opportunity. I took every job. I freelanced, and this is what actually I wish the younger kids were here to hear. If you're
They will get the link actually. There's some, they will get the link.
Because if you're really set on
You're going to
becoming
videotape everything and
if you're really set on becoming a musician, and you really don't have any other skills, as I didn't, and you're focused on it, it's your passion, I view everything as an opportunity, you know, not just to make money, but also to enrich yourself. Like everything I've played, you know, rock music, funk, reggae, blues, you name it. I mean, any type of style of music I've done around the New York, the greater metropolitan area, with hundreds and hundreds of different bands and bandits. And I brought all that in. I think it enriches me as a jazz musician and an improviser because it gives me other musical ammunition and skills. Right, it gives me context. And I don't actually just, this is also for the younger ones, you know, of course you want to listen to jazz, you want to listen to great improvisers, Charlie Parker and Louis Armstrong and Coltrane and Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock and Oscar Peterson, and the list goes on and on and on. But, you know, you'll get things from listening to a Ray Charles record as well, or you'll get things from listening to a Bob Marley record, you know. Good music is good music is good music, right? So I'm not a real prima donna or a snob about a young person's or even an adult's listening habits. You know, if it enriches you and it brings something to your personal voice, then listen to it, play it, absorb it, make it your own. And I feel that experience has enriched me more than if I just played jazz all the time, you know.
Thank you, that's great. Coming to teaching, so this is the thing, I as you both
By the way,
know-
that gig I met you on, see, that was the fun part, because it was a wedding gig in Manhattan at a very high-end catering
You remember
place.
that gig?
Oh yeah, I remember. It was at the Lighthouse, right on the river, right on the Hudson. So Chris and I, was there a sax player? I think it was just me and you.
It was a trio.
So it was Craig, your uncle playing
Yes.
sax. So this was a wedding band, very, you know, got paid well for these gigs, but typically at these events, at least around the metro area, after the couple gets married, there is a cocktail hour where people were milling around, getting their food and getting drinks, and it's like, oh, it'd be nice to have jazz at the cocktail hour. Like that's what they use jazz for at these events. Like, let's use jazz for the cocktail hour, right? No one's paying attention anyway. It doesn't matter what we play. So that's the fun part of the gig, was that first hour with you. Then I had to go with the band and go oonch, 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 oonch. But anyway, but that was, yeah. And I do remember being, I said, oh, you're grew up in Europe. You just moved here? Oh, great. I got the guy's card. I said, oh, you'll get some work around here. And he did.
Yeah,
He's
you
done
were
very well
right.
for himself.
That was a very positive experience for me. It was one of my very first gigs I did in New York.
I didn't realize it was one of your first.
Ras Bonagura is a union member, and what I did when I moved to New York, I went to the union, and I went, Bob Cranshaw told me, you contact every bass player. I did. A lot of bass players in New York. I contacted them all, and I don't know, I mean, I called them all up, and out of 40 or 50, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 called me back. But Russ was very responsive. Yeah. Coming back to the attitude, though, so what I wanted to say was I was just finished 6 years with Ron Carter, and one of our conversations was always about nowadays young and upcoming musicians. So how, and this is a question I haven't really figured out, and I don't know what your experience is with the next generation or an up-and-coming generation. It seems like I have a difficult time teaching sometimes with the attention span of younger musicians and the seriousness about music. And I never thought, personally, I was great in any way. The story I have told a few times, my very first bass teacher, I was with him for 6 years, and there were some things I liked, and he was very inspiring, and then I'm like, well, if this is what music is all about, I either quit or I look somewhere else. And I'm like, well, let's go somewhere else. So I went to Holland, met a new bass teacher, did classical education, and I was busy in Holland, and then, I don't know, something kind of didn't feel right, and I thought to myself, well, if this is what music is all about, I either quit or go somewhere else, which got me to Berkeley. And then after Berkeley, it was kind of like, well, it's either New York or LA. I chose New York. But I was always very serious about the music. I know I was a slow learner. I know it would take me time to learn something. But it's teaching these days, how would you instill that? Sometimes I miss that, what I can hear in both of you, is that seriousness about music. I mean, it's fun too, but the willingness to take every gig, the willingness to learn every reed instrument. I mean, that's kind of like, well, someone told you, John LaPorta told you, if you want to work a lot, you learn all these instruments. You did it. If you go to a young student today and say, you have to learn beside the alto saxophone, all the other saxophone, they're going to look at you like,
You know what's going to happen?
Yeah.
That's funny you say that, because what changed my mind is I was like, well, when I went to Berkeley, I was mostly a flute player first, and flute and piccolo, because I played that all through, and I played with tons of different kind of funk, rock bands, all kind of stuff. But when I became an adult and I got on my own, the thing that made me really heed his advice was my stomach was growling. When your stomach growls, you do all kind of stuff.
That's right. It's either take that gig or you're back to digging that ditch.
There you go.
I'd rather take the gig.
That's right. And I even worked at Banco di Napoli. When I first got out of Berkeley, I worked at Banco di Napoli. It was an Italian bank on Park Avenue. And I did it for about a year, and then I got a show, Singing in the Rain, because they needed the piccolo part. So I played all the way, and it was in Bellport. I had to drive out to Long Island. And so, yeah, and after getting out of Berkeley, and then I got that show, after that was it. I went from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. That's it. That's it. Yep. So your stomach will make you, when you got bills coming in the house and your stomach is growling and you don't like it, I don't like ramen. So that'll make you get up there and do some other stuff too.
Yeah, that's great. How would you, you teach quite a bit too. How are your students? I mean,
I'm doing less teaching now than I have probably in the past 20 or 25 years or so. When my kids were smaller, I had a lot more students. I don't know why. I never really, looked for students. People would just always call me and say, "Hey, so and so gave me a number and said you're a piano player and you might teach us." Yeah, I'll teach. It's the same thing. Like, why not? It's money I can make at home, and maybe I can help someone in the process. So, and I got first a lot of kids that were I call them classical refugees, right? Because their parents is like, well, Johnny, you're going to take piano because your sister did, and your older brother did, and I used to play piano, and I always regretted it. I didn't study, so you're going to take lessons. And, Johnny takes his lessons, and it's Mozart or Bach or something boring, and they don't really learn to read. They do what I do. They fake it. They have the teacher play it for them. I'll play it. Oh. And then, after a few years of not practicing, they're still playing with this. Well, I don't know. Maybe we should give Johnny jazz lessons or something, So, because they don't want to stop, right? They don't want to admit that maybe the kid's not motivated or not that interested in it. So I would get these kids that, some of them were actually interested in jazz or improvisation or something besides classical music. But I got a whole variety of kids that really weren't motivated, kids that maybe had not much natural talent. They were just, again, doing it because their parents were forcing them to have piano lessons. And their last ditch attempt was like, let's ditch the classical teacher and go to this jazz guy, right? So, and some of them I did teach classical music, and some of my students did very well with that. But I eventually got to the point after, this again started when my kids were young, so like 20, 25 years ago. And I sometimes had 3 or 4 students every day after school on weekdays. And I started kind of culling it out, like being more selective, like, how long has he or she been playing? 2 or 3 years? No, wait. Send them back to me like when they're in high school, And if they're interested in really learning something about jazz and theory and improvisation, and I'll teach them some classical if they want. But I started to curate the students a little bit more and be more selective. And I have to say I've gotten some really great kids. One kid who only came twice was named Emmett Cohen, who's like,
Yeah,
he's had an amazing career. And I'm not taking any responsibility for that whatsoever. He was very talented, even when he showed up at my house. But well on his way. But yeah, I enjoy the teaching process. I'm glad you asked me up and finally got me up here to do this, because I do like. It's very satisfying to present some information. You could say a lot of things. You could say 20 different things in the course of a lesson, but you might say one thing. All of a sudden, it's like that. It's that key that goes in that keyhole that kid has been needing that lock to be unlocked. Oh, door open. And that door leads to another room, right? You never know. So you never know what you're going to say. So I enjoy that process. I enjoy seeing those things unlocked and seeing their minds open up a little bit. And I think you said this the other day, the lesson, when you teach a lesson, I think this goes with any discipline, not just music. I always learn something too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. What's the old saying? When one teaches, two learn.
Yeah, I actually I had an experience.
Very true.
It's I played before I moved to New York. I had played in this wedding band in Boston, and one wedding we played, there was this balloon artist, and he did this amazing things. He had all these balloons. He blew them up, and he asked the kid, "What do you want me to do?" Elephant. He's like. 5 minutes later, he had an elephant, and then he walked over there, a crown. He made a crown. So then, I know some of the wedding gigs we eat together with the photographers, and we were eating together with this balloon artist. And I sat next to him. I said, I had never seen anyone doing what you do with the balloons. He's like, yeah, that's what I love to do. And he said, people come from all over the world to study with me. I said, wow, that's amazing. And then he said, and then my students...
Balloon guru.
Yeah, balloon guru. And then he said, my students go out and they win all these competitions. I said, wow. And then I said, aren't you sad that you don't win any of these competitions? He said, no. He said, they bring me all the good stuff. The fool is the teacher who doesn't learn from their students. And I was like, wow. That was a big lesson for me. It's like, wow, he doesn't care about the quota, all the rewards. He said, they come from all over the world, every student brings something to him, and he has all that information, and he's a master at that, So, yeah.
Another thing that's I tell my students this all the time, there's a real benefit for anybody, because, I have younger students, I have older ones. But the thing about it is music, not just jazz music, all music teaches you about life. Because it gives you a work ethic, it shows you have like a daily schedule, it's teaching you like other things. There's so many benefits from learning how to play music. And I try to tell I tell my kids all the time, I say, listen, I mean, not my own personal kids, but I don't have kids, but my students, yeah, right. And I said, this music will teach you a lot, life lessons, many, many, many life lessons. And that is one of the best benefits. It teaches you how to be an adult and have responsibility and have how to be on time and all of these little tiny lessons that make a person a decent human being.
Not to mention the fact that, you know, it's preaching to the choir here probably, but, you know, so many studies done.
Oh yeah.
About, right? When kids are in their math class and they wire up their brains and see what's firing, or if they're in their English lit class and they wire up and they see what's firing, and they get a music class and it's like a fireworks show inside your brain. Like music activates every part of your brain. So and these schools keep trying to cut music programs and arts programs. Like, oh, that's the last thing you want to cut, right? Cut your lacrosse team, right? But keep the big band, right? You know,
Football
keep
team.
your wind ensemble. Yeah. I'm not anti-sport, but like it's just sports that doesn't activate the brain in the same way. It's very specific, but it's just so. I mean, and you have to figure that applies whether you're playing an instrument. That probably applies when you're listening to music, and they've done studies on that too, right? And there's some music that triggers the brain more than other music, and I won't get into that breakdown because I don't have those articles in front of me. But it's just the point is, it's good for your brain, it's good for your soul, and it's a very special thing. We're privileged to be involved in it.
Yeah, I heard once Chaz is here. We went to the Victor Wooten camps. I went down to Nashville 5 times total. But Victor said one thing I won't forget. He's like, you know, in sports you have a winner and a loser. In music, there's no loser. It's a winner. The musicians is a winner, and the audience is a winner. They come to see you, and you have this exchange going on, you know. And then, you know, I sat on a few workshops. Every now and then someone disagrees. It's like, no, you know, sports, you know. But I do think, yeah, they don't really see it that way. But you know, you ever seen in Europe? I grew up with soccer. They call it Fußball in Germany, and there was always. I was shocked in Belgium sometimes when the British fans came and played against Belgium. You know, there was always, there was always a fight afterwards. You know, and they showed it on the news. And it doesn't matter if the English won or if they lost. I mean, they would start a fight. That's what I grew up with. Sorry, or if anyone's
but
British here, you know.
And that's what always bothered me about sports. Again, I didn't have any particular athletic talent. I'm probably more athletic now than I am in my 50s now than I was when I was a teenager. But ironically, it always bothered me that there had to be a loser. But that other team played so well and they lost by 1 point. That's not fair. That's not fair. There should be something. No, it's win or loser, black and white, in or out, yes or no. You know, music is not. You don't see fights after music concerts. Sometimes at the concert, but you know, if it's like a mosh pit kind of thing. But no, you know, it doesn't create that kind of tension because, like you said, everyone wins.
Yeah, everyone wins.
Everyone wins.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you.
I guess unless the band sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. I had something now. Well, I do remember, you know, they came out with these concerts where they have this mud pit and then people just pushing each other over. It's like, I think it happened at the Woodstock 2. They did a remake of the Woodstock Festival at some point. And it was nothing like the original Woodstock Festival. You know, they had this thing and there was a mud pit and I don't know what bands they invited and people just shoving each other around. I'm like, what is that all about? You know, I'm like, and you saw that on, I don't know where I saw it, but I know it happened. You know, like, that's just strange, you know. I mean, you know, we talked about it in the opening on Sunday, and when we talked to the participants, you know, what I learned about being with Mike Longo, listening to his stories from Dizzy Gillespie, the older generation, I think that's definitely something we picked up with Lionel Hampton. They love the audience. I mean, Lionel Hampton, you couldn't get him stop playing for the people. The more the people applauded, the more he wanted to play.
They had to bring the hook out on him many times.
Wallighetto, who passed on, I mean, he was telling the story in Paris. You know, he was playing, and actually, I think, do you remember the story when he got a heart attack on stage?
Oh, yeah, I was there.
And he kept playing.
Yeah.
He was like, you know, they was putting him away from the microphone because one shoulder was hanging down, and the emergency people came, and he was like,
He lived for the audience. That's as long as he saw that, man, that was a very, you know, certain people in music, be it classical music or jazz or rock and roll, certain people, they after they make that person, after God molds that person, he breaks the mold. Lionel Hampton was one of those people that he broke the mold, because he just loved the audience. He lived for that. He didn't even care if he had like $5. I mean, he always had a lot of money in his pocket, but he didn't care about that. He lived for the music and for the money. I mean, just for the music and the crowd. He didn't care about anything else. And he was one of the greatest entertainers. If you see some of that early footage of him like doing stick work and jumping up on the drums and jumping through jumps, man, just look at it on YouTube. It's amazing. You don't see anything like that today. So it's just a different time, and he was a true entertainer. He just and all the bands that he had were great bands.
And there's still true entertainers out there, and there's true artists out there, but now it's like never the twain shall meet. You're like either a serious artist and you don't connect with the audience, and you turn your back, or you're an entertainer and your music doesn't really mean that much, right? But these guys, that generation, Dizzy Gillespie's another one.
James Brown.
Like they had the goods, they made great music, and they entertained people, and they weren't afraid to make a show out of it, because, you know, it's all part of the same package. And the one thing I think I don't like about jazz in certain contexts now is it becomes so intellectual, so clinical, so packaged. You know, it's like, hey, you know what? It's still supposed to be fun. You know, it's really supposed to be fun, and you're supposed to engage the audience. That doesn't mean playing down to them. Doesn't mean like watering down your art, you know. But like engage them, hook them somehow, bring them in, because especially in jazz, and we talked about this in
Dizzy
class.
Gillespie was great for that. He was a fool. Oh my God, every day.
Yeah, and you don't have to jump up and down, but even if it's just musically connecting with people, like, because it's a symbiotic relationship. More so in jazz, and we were talking about that with Bernard and Democracy. You know, it's more so in jazz than any other music, because it's happening. It's not a Bach fugue. It's not going to be the same every night, and you know the notes never change because they were written that way in 1700 or something, and they're perfect, and no one changes them because that's the way it is, right? And you have to play it that way. Jazz, it changes every night. We play the same song back to back. You know, we play I Got Rhythm. 5 minutes later, we play I Got Rhythm again. It's a completely different I Got Rhythm. And that's because of you or whoever's out there, right? Because of symbiosis and whoever's on stage. And it's just so alive and interactive and symbiotic, and that can be entertaining, and it should be entertaining, right? That's the greatest asset of this music. It's alive constantly. It's never in a box. It's never static. It's always moving forward.
and that's the exciting part about it. I mean, that's kind of like something you look forward to. It's like, yeah, what's going to be next night?
Exactly.
I remember when we, when it was decided that Jason Marsalis will be the headliner for the Lionel Hampton Big Band. Jason said, "I do all the stick stuff, but don't get me to jump on a floor tom." He was like, "How am I going to do that?"
You gotta draw the line somewhere.
You draw the line somewhere, yeah. But we do have this little thing where he's doing a duet with a drummer. You know, Lionel loved to do these duets with the big band where he plays with another drummer, and yeah. So, how would you teach that fun aspect of music to how would you teach that to a student? Like, how would you, if they don't see that and don't experience that?
Hopefully, well, this is what I think, and this is just from my own personal experience. Sometimes you have kids like you and I. When I was a little kid, when I came out of my mother's womb, I knew I was going to play music. I did. I don't know why. And I'm the only person in my entire family who plays music. I just love the music. But some kids, it takes a while for them to get it, for them to get excited. You might have a kid for like two or 3 years. And like you said, you stop for a while, and then he comes back and says, "Oh, Mr. Guyton, yeah, I'm really serious. I'm serious now. I'm ready. So it has to be from you. Mm-hmm. You know, nobody made me like music. If you love music, it's something in you. But sometimes you can stir up something in students, then they start to love it too. Or some of them just have it naturally. That's what I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had an experience back in, when I came out of college. I was teaching in Boston in a music store. And I really had no money coming out of college, and I do all kinds of side jobs. And I noticed that my students weren't practicing, and I was driving home one day and like, well, I'm not really practicing that much. And then I realized we also learn through osmosis, which is like an energetic thing. So I'm like, maybe I should practice more. So then I got really serious about practicing. And then, half a year later, I noticed my students were more practicing. And that was just, I don't know if that's for everyone, but that was my personal experience. I thought, you cannot preach something you don't do, So I'm like, maybe that was a tough time for me anyway, but I thought I just got to be more serious about the music. And I noticed a half year later, at least some of my students picked up on that. And I'm like, wow, they're practicing now. I was like, that's great. I got really motivated.
They say, you got to be the change that you want to see in the world. You got to make that change.
Yeah.
And then you'll see it, ripples in a pond, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I can honestly say I never had that problem because when I went to Berklee College of Music, I went to school with like Greg Osby, Jeff Watts, and Cindy Blackman, Wallace Froney. I got there, I was like, oh my God. When I was in undergrad, I was practicing music for about 4 or 5 years, about 20 hours a day. And then that is not an exaggeration. I mean, when I say practicing music, I don't mean I don't have the instrument in my mouth.
Right.
Right, I'm practicing
Proactive
harmony,
mental.
right. I'm harmony and just writing and learning how to read music, and it's like, and when you go through that, it's like, man, it's something to in the practice. And then after that, I would go down to Wally's and play. So, like I said, it's a lifestyle. You live music if you really love it.
Yeah.
And you can't help it. It's like, if you don't play music a while, you're like, I gotta go out. I gotta go out and play somewhere tonight. I gotta get out of here.
That's great. Today, Bernard, when we had lunch, he talked about the story how he became band leader for Aretha Franklin, and it was an amazing story. I never heard that story before.
Yeah.
And so, how did you? When I came into Line Hempnick, you were the musical director, and you're also with Abdullah Ibrahim right now, and you're doing the, I think, sextet, and then you're doing the trio, you're doing all those different bands for him, you organize it, you call the musicians. I don't know, are you doing the payroll for him as well? Oh no.
No.
You just organize the
He
musicians.
handles that.
That's why they call him
If so,
Dollar.
I would pay myself a little double.
That's why they call him Dollar Brand.
Yeah. But how did you stumble into that? I noticed.
Oh, that's a good story.
Go ahead.
Well,
In general, how did you? Because people approach you to be, like, I don't know. You have that, I mean, I don't know you any other way, but you have this thing about you. People ask you frequently, or have asked you in the past more than once, to be a band leader, to take over certain parts.
I don't know why they
organizing.
do that. I have no idea, and I'm serious. But the thing about it is, the way I got in Abdullah's band is, just like Hampton, I auditioned for Lionel Hampton's band 3 times before I got in the band.
Wow.
So, and same thing with Abdullah.
You're talking about Abdullah Ibrahim, who's
Right.
a South African pianist and composer.
World famous, who Duke Ellington discovered.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just for those of you who may not know.
And I was just in Europe for a month with him, and so before I came here. But Vincent Herring used to play with Abdullah Ibrahim. This was probably the late 80s, probably around 87, 88, somewhere around there. And so he said, well, I'm leaving the band. And Vincent Herring and I were very good friends for many years. And we were really, really close for a long time. And so he said, yeah, I'm leaving the band. Actually, he tried to get me in a lot of bands. So you make connections through your peers and your friends, So he said, yeah, you should go audition for the band. And he's going to have an audition on a certain day. And so it was me and a few other saxophone players, and I didn't get it. So years later, he called me back, and then that was like over 25 years ago now. I've been playing with him many long time. So you just gotta want it, and you gotta be out there. And that's what's so different about the scene now. Because when I came out of school, oh my God, you could go hang out with Freddie Hubbard every night. if he was in town, you could hang out with AT and the Wailers. You could hear everybody playing. You could go hang out and have drinks with them. But everything has really like changed now. It's just completely different. That kind of scene is not there anymore.
And yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of those great masters who I feel honored that I got a chance to play with a whole bunch of them. You know, they're not here anymore. So it was just a different time, you know. But you can still do it. You know, there's a lot of young musicians today, especially in New York and all over the world, that are really, really, really talented. But I feel a little sad because they won't be able to see that live. I remember the first time I saw Freddie Hubbard live. It was live at Tinker's in Roxbury. It was like
Boston.
It was in Boston. It was like church. It was like the Holy Spirit was there. I was like, oh my God, you feel that? It was unbelievable. When you hear that live, that's something you never. When I saw Art Blakey many, 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 many times, it was like, man, it was like James Brown. He could control the band. He would have it like riding around and be quiet. It's a whole. When you hear stuff like that, that changes you, and that makes you. I'm gonna do that.
That reminds me when I was in Boston too, and I walked into, they had, Eddie Gomez was playing with his quartet in a church close to Berkeley. It wasn't Roxbury, but I know I could walk there. It was not too far, a couple of blocks away. And I walked into this church, and there was the light was dimmed, but there was this light on him. And it was just the first time I ever saw Eddie Gomez. I listened back then a lot to the Bill Evans recordings with Eddie Gomez on bass, and I was just like, there was this aura about him. I could swear there was a glow around him, you know, and it was amazing. And I was just like startled, and then I heard the sound coming out of the bass, and it just it really hit me, you know. So yeah, that's some of the, and then the first time I saw Miles Davis, Miles Davis, I don't know, it's my favorite all-time musician. I hear one of the trumpet with the mute, and it kind of hits my heart, you know. And I remember when I saw him, he came to the North Sea Jazz Festival in Holland. I wasn't not even close to thinking about going to America, but I saw him in the 80s, I think 80, 88, 89, maybe 1990, I don't know, just a couple of years before he died. And I was just like, you know, I was there all by myself, and you know, I think I was with a friend or with a group, and I had to go away from them. Just like, I just had to experience him, you know, and he was playing with the fusion band, the modern Miles Davis, but it was just like, it really hit me when I saw him live. I mean, it's true. I mean, what do you do with these younger musicians who don't have that experience to see some of the great artists?
But you know why? Because the music is changing, and you don't want music to stay static. You want it to. That's one thing about improvised music. It's continually evolving. Yeah. So it's just evolving to something that I'm not used to. I'm used to hearing like, you know, the cats like in there, like killing it, and they are killing it, but it's just a different kind of way. You know, it's just evolving, and that's good. Evolution is good.
There's still, like you say, you could wander from club to club and hang out with these guys and have a beer and talk. You know, there's still a scene in New York. It's not as vibrant as it was 20 or 30 years ago. But I just found about 2 clubs in the area that are not in the city proper, but they're in the suburbs. 2 new clubs that are very dedicated to having live music. You guys may know about them. Uncle Chief up in Brewster. And there's a place in Piermont, New York called Otto's Full Service. They both have pianos. The first place, Uncle Chief, actually has a B3 as well. They have a drum set on site. And you know, we'll see how long they last, right? That's always a question. But they're very committed to bringing jazz music in there and building an audience for it. And there's still plenty of the older guard is dying off, but now the guys that came up in the 70s and 80s are becoming the older guard. Yeah. You know, and then you have the newbies like Emmett Cohen and people. They're carrying the flag. You know, they're marching the music forward. It's not so bleak. It's still out there. There's still a scene. Maybe not as vibrant in the same scene as it used to be, like you said, but it's a different. You know, the music is alive, and we're all responsible for, You know, like if I have a night off and I'm not, you know, broke, which I'm doing okay now. You know, like I'm not starving. It's not hand to mouth. You know, I go out and see my friends play, or even if they're not friends, I'll go out and see something I'm interested in. I'm at the club. You know, I'm at there buying a drink, buying some food, supporting the music, because you know, it's like, well, someone else will go. No, someone else isn't gonna go. You're gonna go. You're going to go and support it, because then I want those people to come to my gig too. You know, it's like that's another symbiotic relationship. You know, you support me, I'll support you. But whether you come to my gig or not, I want to be out there supporting the music in general, and making the club feel like, oh, people come out and hear this kind of stuff. All right, we'll book some more jazz. You know.
Actually, matter of fact, that made an impression on me when we had the CD release party at Trumpets for the trio CD I made. Brian, Fabian, Marsalis, you came out for that. Do you remember?
Yes, I think I did.
Yeah, you were sitting, you know, there were not too many people, but I remember you walked in like, wow, man is coming to check this out, you know, and we just played the songs we did on the CD, and Jason was in town. What I usually do when we have a project, or what I would do with anyone, I just book around their schedule, you know, oh, you're coming? And he's always kind enough to let me know when he's coming to. You know, he lives in New Orleans, and he's kind enough to, sometimes he is asking to stay with me, which he has done for years. And sometimes they pay for a hotel, but, you know, it's like, man, I'm coming up. You know, it's like, okay, let me book a gig. And then we just had that CD finished, and we needed a CD release concert, and we did it at the Trumpets, and you came, you know. So, and I remember it made an impression on me, and it's great to support people like that. I mean, if your fellow musicians come out to your gig, you will never, especially, you know, if, you know, someone you really respect, like, wow, they come and check this out. It's really awesome.
It's a good show.
Yeah. One thing, last thing I'm gonna, you know, ask you, you were mentioning earlier about hanging out. So, when I met, in '88, I went to LA and met this great bass player, Brian Bromberg. And I could barely play. It's actually, I took a lesson with him. I wasn't even able to play an F blues. I played the F blues, and then I knew the blues would go to the 4 chord in the 5th bar, but I didn't know about the turnaround really. And I had a lesson, and I played, and I was so embarrassed. He's like, what do you want to play? He's like, play a blues. So I played walking bass, and then I got lost. And he's like, you know, he took the bass, and he's like, this is an F blues. So I played the bass. He was talking to me while I was playing, and he said, this is how you play a bass line. This is how you play a solo. He played a solo. And from then on, I was staying in LA at that time for 3 months. I went to every gig he did. He took me, he picked me up. I was only a few blocks away. I was staying with a guy from Holland. We got into a little argument, and I was like, halfway through my stay, I walked over to Brian's place. Once I knew where he lived, I was there all the time, you know. One day he made breakfast for me, you know, and then he picked me up for the gigs. We talked about music all the time. And similar situation when every time Ray Brown came to Idaho, I would go and hang out with him. You know, he was with John Clayton, Gregory Hutchinson, and Ray, you know, Jeff Keezer. I was just a fly on the wall. I mean, I didn't dare to speak, but I just wanted to be close to the guys. I went to all the workshops. I was just like drawn to them. I just want to hang out with them. So that's something that a drummer recently, a couple of years ago, he said on Facebook, is like, what happened to hanging out? I mean, you know, he had a hard time with students. It's like, that's where you learn. He was hanging out with Jeff Hamilton all the time. And he's like, what happened to hanging out? The fact of hanging out and just listening. And last thing I'm going to say, there's this bass event which started again after the pandemic in Germany, where I haven't been playing in Europe for 15 years, and they have this bass event. And I remember, I go to every bass player's workshop. I just want to hear what they have to say. And I just like, I have to see what they do, you know. I mean, it's just ingrained in me when someone is doing something, unless I'm organizing an event. I'm very sorry about your masterclass today. I had to run in and out, and I really want to hear what other people have to say. But what happened to the element of hanging out? What is your experience? How do you get young students to just come and hang out. I mean, they just come to the gig and they want to see you play and they want to see what you have to say. I mean, that's for me, that was a big part of, Brian then recommended me to the Moscow Idaho Festival, and he knew I had to learn a lot, but he saw that I was serious about the music. So if I see someone coming, hanging out all the time, at some point you pass on. It's like, well, I think that would be a good gig for you. You should do that gig. So what is your experience with younger students? Are they coming to your gigs? Are they hanging out? And how would you get younger students? How can we teach to them if they don't do it? I mean, how would we get the younger audience younger up-and-coming musicians to come to hang out?
Yeah, that's a very important element. I've had many of my students come see me play with Abdullah, the Basie band, the Ellington band. When they see those type of experiences, they experience that, man, they're hooked after that. They were like, oh my God. Like, I have a student now, man. I've been teaching him since he was like a little kid. Now he's playing with the Lincoln Center. He's playing with the Lincoln Center.
That's amazing.
The youth orchestra.
Youth orchestra, great.
Yeah. And so, but you don't get those kind of students every day. Those you use probably few and far between. But it's very important if you're gonna play music to be around it. The more you have in that element you're playing, it's gonna better you. And you always want to try to play with people that are better than you. But the difference is, when I was coming out of undergrad and I was hanging out, I mean, I can go to the Blue Note and get in free and go to the jam session tonight, and beers are like $2.50. Now, you leave the house, $100 is like $1. So
Right, if you want your students to come out now, they better have parents that have money.
that's right.
Or they got to have a good job.
Yeah, because it's just a different time, like I said.
That's one thing that's gotten different in the scene is that jazz clubs have become very prohibitive cost-wise. $20 to get in, $20 or $30 minimum at each table.
Now a lot of these jazz clubs, they want if they have a jam session, they want the people who come in to play to pay.
Right. Pay to play.
Oh yeah, it's if you want to play, it's $5. like what? Yeah, but so it's just a different time.
Yeah,
but you still, one thing that you can do is, and I still do at my house. I have, a lot of times I have Antonio Hart and Greg Osby come up to my house.
I remember I met Greg Osby at your house.
And we play right in my living room. I have a baby grand piano. I have a drum set. I have amplifiers, and man, we have you're more than welcome to come. We play all the time. Yeah. So it is important to be in the element, and the more you're involved in that activity, you're only gonna get better.
Yeah. One last thing, man. I kind of skipped over that when I asked Cleave about how you became a band leader and doing all these other things now. And for you, I experienced that many times. You do charts overnight. I can call you at 5 o'clock in the morning. I mean, you pick up, you text back. I mean, you're kind of one of a handful of people I know I can communicate with at any time of the day. And you do a lot of preparation work. I mean, people hire you as a musical director and things like that. Is that something which came natural to you because you are a piano player? Or is it something you have actually interest in, knowing about arranging, knowing about how to put a song together? Is it just something which you were pushed into it, or is it something, and that's the last thing I want to say, and then we have a final word, but I was seriously interested in arranging, composing, so
Yeah.
I chose to do that, but I know other people, Bernard today told the story about how he became musical director with Aretha Franklin. He was the last guy they asked. They asked the 5 other guys before him.
Right.
So Bernard was left. So he didn't know that till afterwards that he was the last guy they asked. So he
Right.
kind of, and he said,
I get the feeling that he was Aretha's first choice. Like he had
Yeah.
some connection with Aretha, and she trusted him more than anyone else. That's the feeling I got from that story. But well, I mean, as a pianist, especially when I kind of found out what jazz was officially and started getting some proper tutoring in it in college, I immediately started writing. I was very inspired by Thelonious Monk, who's one of my favorite jazz composers, along with like Wayne Shorter and Benny Golson. But at the particular time, especially college years, I was Monk. I was very into Monk. And breaking down his tunes, and Wayne's too, especially that period with Miles, like tunes like Fall and Iris, and just looking
Orbit.
at, yes, well, not Orbit so much, but the ones that had chords that weren't so much free, but that when we went through that period of writing 16-bar songs, every tune was 16 bars long, right? And they all had you know, Nefertiti, all that stuff, ESP, all that stuff. I would just sit there and go, why does this work? Why? Because it's not traditional 2-5-1, you know, cyclical, circle, this type of. Why does this sound good? You know? Same thing with Monk. Like, what? This breaks all the rules. But this sounds amazing. So that I got into composing in college, and I think I've always been kind of a natural arranger. I was thinking about my senior recital in Patterson. I actually took the third movement of Brahms' Third Symphony. Da 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 da. I made a jazz waltz out of it, you know, like a ballad kind of waltz, because I like the changes and I like the melodies. Like, this could work in a jazz context, and it did. So my arranger brain was always already kind of turning at that point, you know, my late teens, early 20s. And as a pianist, it helps. I was just telling the students today at the master class, you know, it's, or maybe I didn't say it specifically, but whether you play a horn or drums or guitar, or whatever, it's always great to have some facility at the piano, not to be able to rattle off Chopin etudes and stuff, but facility in terms of finding chords and be able to understand the layout. Because it's like the workstation. Like, it's all laid out in front of you literally. You can see it visually, what's happening, harmony. And so as a piano, I think pianists tend to be arrangers because their instrument, you know, is conducive for that kind of thought process, for arranging. Yeah, and I love arranging. I love producing, and I'd like to think I've gotten better at it over the years. I love composing. I'm not disciplined with composing like some people go in. They say, "Well, I'm just going to write something. I'm going to write." It's like Stevie Wonder, right? I understand when you meet Stevie Wonder, he says, "I'm Stevie Wonder. I write a song every day." I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. I do not do that. Sometimes I have to write a song every year. But I mean, it's all part of the same, like, creative process. Composing is just a really slowed down improvisation. That's all it is in my mind, you know. And sometimes you get the flash, like, oh, and the whole song comes in, you just screw it. It's like, and then it plays, wow, it actually sounds good, you know. It's like you get that Mozartian flash where it just all comes to you at once, you know. And sometimes it's like, well, you get 2 bars or 4 bars, like, well, I can't think. I'll come back to that later, you know. Then the muse whispers in your ear again. Well, the next part goes like this. Yeah. And then you get fights with the muse, like, all right. Well, so this was done, right? And, you know, she goes back. Well, yeah, it's done. And then she's holding something behind her back. What's up behind her back? Nothing. She scampers back off and goes, "Come here, you!"
You tackle her.
Right? What's that piece? Oh, yeah, that's what I need. That's the chords to the bridge. You didn't tell me about those before. Yeah, so, yeah, that's the experience I have. So it's either like a flash or like I work for it chunk by chunk, you know. But I love the process. I love the process. Right? Do you have the same experience where she just messes with you? It's like, really? Why you were holding out on me for a year on that, man? Anyway, so I actually like the process of charting stuff. I used to, you know, it's laborious, but I like writing charts by hand. But now everyone expects everything in a digital format. So I've gotten myself into MuseScore, which is a digital notation.
Yeah, that's great.
So
Plus it's free.
It's free, and I've got, you know, I could still write the song in pencil in half the time, but it wouldn't look as nice.
Well, I do have to say your calligraphy is outstanding. Those are one of the best handwritten charts.
It takes time. I don't toss it off like that. That's like writing, oh, that doesn't look good, erase, or writing.
Well, it's not only that it looks
ruler,
good.
you know, I mean, yeah.
You really know the form of the song and the way you lay it out. It's very easy to read. You know.
Right, because I know what I like to see, and we've all read horribly written charts, and you learn what not to do, right? Don't thrust us in front of. I want to see something that I would like to read, you know.
No, I know that's amazing. Your handwriting is amazing. I love it, personally. Yeah.
What are you doing later?
Now, if you had a final for the young musicians up and coming, if you had a final message to motivate them to as we said when we started out, that it's hard work, so is everything else, but the reward is amazing. You know, a lot of friends we know, I mean, how much fun do we have playing with the Lionhead Big Band, and how much fun we have when we play together. I mean, it's, or do anything, like on this week, for example, you know, we have a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
So what is it, you know, you could relate to someone who want to get into it,
Okay. I could say, if
to
you
motivate them to follow?
if you find yourself really loving music, this is a good example. If you find yourself really loving music, I just, you know, most of the times I reflect on my life because that's what I know, you know? So I just think about myself. When I was a little kid, I just loved music. And when I was a kid, we used to go to dances and dance to the popular tunes at the firehouse, or we used to have dances. So if you find yourself really loving music, and then when you get out of high school, you say, well, what am I going to do to support myself? If you find yourself loving music, music has taken me all over the world too many times to count. I can't even count how many times I've been to most places in the world. Yeah, so, and nobody in my entire family has seen the things that I've seen and played for sheiks and princes and presidents.
Who was the prince you played for in?
I played for some sheiks with Abdullah in Saudi Arabia. And when we went to the sheik's palace, he had like solid gold doors or rubies and diamonds in the door. And he drove up in a diamond encrusted Mercedes-Benz. Persian rugs the size of a football field. It was so opulent. I was like, oh my God, look at and the guests. It was like, man, people don't see that kind of stuff. And you know, when I saw that, I said, man, I thought America was something. We got garbage. And I was like, you gotta sort that oil money is something else.
Oil money.
Yeah, it's going out soon, but man, it was something to see, man. I mean, can you imagine going to see like you can go knock on the door and there's like a solid gold door with like diamonds and rubies in it. Everything in the palace was solid gold. That's crazy. Yeah, I know. So if you really want to see the world, it's better than. Nah, I stand by guys who have to protect our coastline and the America. But if you don't want to, you know, you can lose your life like that. So it's a much safer thing if you learn how to play music and you can see the world. You can really see the entire world, and you know, it'd be a lot safer. So.
Have some good falafel.
But yeah, thank you so much. And Matt, if you had a final, I mean, you know, if you want a young musician to, I mean, I don't know, it's a hard question. I don't know what.
I'll say what Rufus Reed always said at the end of all his emails and at the end of every lesson. Keep swinging. Keep swinging.
Keep swinging.
Faith, keep swinging. Keep listening. Keep listening. Yeah. No, I don't have anything particularly profound to say, sorry.
That's all right. It's good, you know. Yeah, I don't know what tribe that is from, but there's this native saying I heard a long time ago that the roadmap of your life is engraved in your heart. And I usually say it on workshops all the time. And I had this teacher. She was a spiritual teacher. Her name was Aurora. And she said, you got to learn how to follow your gut, you know. And then that got me kind of thinking about. And then I heard the saying after I was with her, and. So I had to learn how does my heart talk to me? You know, how can I identify it's not my mind, but something which comes from your heart place, you know. And what I came up with is, you know, when you think about something, oh man, it would be so cool if I could do that, and you get this like awe feeling, and then usually the mind comes in and says, nah, you can't do it, man, you're not good enough. How are you gonna go? How are you gonna go to America? You cannot do that. And so I had to learn how my heart speaks to me. So, and then I'm like, well, that saying really stuck with me, and I was kind to try to follow my heart first before, you know, and don't listen to what's in between the ears, you know. So, I mean, that's a good way, you know, if you find a way how to follow your gut or your heart, you know, somewhere over here, you know, something which gets you really excited when you think about it, and you're like, man, that would be cool. You know, I do want to bring the story in, and then we finish, you know, and maybe inspires you to say one more thing. But my father was a classical trained musician. He always wanted me to be a classical bass player. he was very against for me going to America just because, you know, he doesn't like the U.S. foreign politics back in the day. You know, it's like no, you know. And then, you know, I wanted to go. I met in Holland a guy who went to Berklee College of Music, and I'm like, I want to go to Berklee. So he actually started supporting my first semester. You know, anyway. But when I got the gig with the Lionel Hampton Big Band is when everything changed. When he heard that they invited me to the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, he was in Boston. And he didn't smoke that much at that time. But I was living on Clearway Street, which is a block over from Berklee College. He was going out, he was smoking one cigarette after the other. He was pacing down the street. And that's when everything changed, because he knew who Lionel Hampton was, you know. And when that happened, it was kind of like his world totally changed, you know. But up to that point, it was
That validated your choice.
yeah, it validated my choice.
Yeah.
But you talk about, I don't know how many years later, you know, and I'm kind of like, man, I'm glad I stuck to my guns, you know. But that's what things turned around in my family. But I pretty much can identify with your family. It's like, you're the only one, and I'm kind of the only one in my family who went that way. So naturally, you don't get a lot of support from your family. I mean, I admire all these stories from people like, oh yeah, my mother, yeah, you know, my parents, they supported me. I'm like, I didn't, you know, there was a lot of opposition I had to go through.
You know, you made a real important point that I want to make to the kids. You know, a lot of times your parents, they want to push you into something that they think is secure. But they live their lives. You have to live your life. So you want to choose something that you love and live your life. You want to do your own thing. They did theirs.
Yeah.
Every person has a chance to live their life.
Well,
so
or
live your life.
Or they didn't.
Yo, that's
Because
right.
my
And
mom,
regretted it.
right, Midwestern farm girl from Missouri, right? She loved the theater and singing and being on stage and dancing, and that's what she wanted to move to New York when she got out of Missouri. You know, when she got out of high school and maybe go to a music school. And if I was, no daughters of mine's going to get involved with entertainment and all the drinking and the sex, and you're going to stay on the farm, and you're going to go to meet a nice man and get married and have kids. And you know, he forbade it, and she was like, okay, Dad, you know, like, and that was it. I mean, she didn't go pursue a music career. She didn't try to get on Broadway. She didn't go to acting school. She met my dad and started having kids young, and that's why she became a stage mom. You know, when she found out I was into music, because my two older siblings weren't. They both took lessons, but they never really had any proclivity for music. And I was like, well, Matthew's going to be famous, and he's going to be, you know. And then that's why she came to every single gig, and she supported every single thing. And my dad followed suit. He was not a, you know, like he'd say if I complained about the gigs, where he'd say, well, son, it beats digging ditches. You know, he's like, yeah, go play music. Don't. He was a mechanic and an electrician. He said, don't mess up your hands, and you know, get yourself hurt like I did. You know, go do something. So I mean, you're fortunate.
Yeah, the point is,
Right.
live your life.
Live your life.
Do what
Live your
you
life.
want to do. Your parents did what they want to do. Everybody has a life to live, you know. So do something, and hopefully you're going to do something that makes you happy. And then you get paid for it. Oh my God!
Right.
There you go.
Well, thank you very much, Matt King. Yeah. You work for Matt King. Cleave Guyton. My name's Christian Fagan.
Christian Fagan.
Thank you for coming, Jazz Story Hour. Jazz Story Hour. So tomorrow at 6 p.m. we will have a legend. I think we need 2 hours for Bernard. He has a lot of stories to tell. And then hopefully he can repeat the story I heard for the first time today, how he became Aretha Franklin's musical director. It was very interesting. So thank you so much for coming out. And there will be more tomorrow night at 6 p.m. right here. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.